So before we start putting together the left and the right hand and start playing something, it's important to focus on each of the hands individually. And so let's begin by focusing on the right hand. It is very important to set very good patterns from the beginning. You may have heard this in the past, but it is much more difficult to break a bad habit than to start a good one. And so if you start well from the beginning, you will save yourself a lot of heartache and sorrow and really frustration in having to correct something that's already ingrained in your muscle memory. So very important, again, to play with a very relaxed right hand. And I would encourage you to begin playing by simply letting your wrist hang out. Rest on the guitar with your forearm. Due to the ergo play support that I'm using, I am placing my arm over the guitar right above the elbow. I like this rather than placing the forearm on the guitar. Increased exposure of the forearm to this sharp edge of the guitar will eventually result in nerve damage. You continue to put pressure in the same position, in the same place on your forearm, eventually will cause some damage. And I have seen classical guitarists develop nerve damage and decreased ability to use their right hands because of that very position. And so I am placing my right arm over the guitar, virtually resting my biceps on the side of the guitar. So you should allow your entire forearm and fingers just hang loose. Imagine that they are just boiled spaghettis that just came out of the boiling pot and they're just hanging out, draining. So now let's talk about the wrist position. What shape should our wrist have? And there are various schools of thought. There is a Spanish general school of thought and there is a German European school of thought. The Spanish school of thought, really promoted by the father of the classical guitar, Andrés Segovia, advocates for a wrist that's slightly curved. There is a slight angle here between the forearm and the hand itself, and the wrist is fairly high and relatively curved. And there are great advantages to this position. It gives you a very good tone because it allows the wrist to join together with the thumb muscles and press down the string, and so it gives you a lot of leverage for good quality tone. Anyway, so that's one school of thought. There is another school of thought that plays the guitar with a very straight wrist. The wrist has no angle. It comes out straight, and so the thumb is used in a very straight fashion rather than a curved fashion. There are advantages to this position, and the advantages have to do with ergonomics. This feels very comfortable. It reduces the amount of stress placed on the wrist. However, the tonal qualities of this position are fairly limited, especially when you try to do rest strokes. It generally gives you a pretty naily tone, and you're very limited in the amount of volume and colors that you could play with your thumb. I would advocate for a position somewhere in between. Let's split the difference. And let's have a little bit of a curve in the wrist, but not a very dramatic one that would put unnecessary tension, but just a little bit, enough of a curve in the wrist to give us good leverage for good quality tone. But then let's not have it in such a dramatic fashion that would eventually impede our accuracy and our speed. And so perhaps somewhere in the middle would be the best. And so as you let your wrist hang loose, take your thumb and plant it on the 4th D string, and then take the I finger, M finger, and A finger and plant them on the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string. So the wrist is still hovering over the 6th string. It is not dramatic like this. It's a little bit more straight, but the thumb is not perfectly straight, but it's a little bit curved, giving you some leverage to provide a really good quality thick thumb tone. Okay, so as you continue practicing this basic right hand position, I want to give you a couple of words of caution. In the past, I have seen some of my students develop some habits that perhaps it would be wise to warn you against them. One of those habits consists in the placing of the pinky on the top of the guitar to add extra security and stability to the right hand wrist. However, although this may give you a little bit of security right now, know that it is a false sense of security, and this kind of a poor habit will eventually interfere with your playing ability. This is something that I have been guilty of doing myself, as largely self-taught in the beginning years of my classical guitar training. I placed my wrist actually against the wood of the guitar, and this gave me great stability and security, but it really interfered with the quality of my tone and really just my speed and flexibility in playing with different tonal colors. And so I would caution you against resting your wrist against the wood of the guitar, but pushing it out and create distance between your wrist and the body of the guitar. It may feel that you have your wrist firmly planted in the air, and it may feel pretty insecure with this kind of position, but the more you do it, the more secure you will feel.